Imagine it's 2011. A 26-year-old American man is sitting behind his laptop typing lines of code. He believes he can create a free market without government interference, a place where people can buy and sell anything anonymously, paid for with a new digital currency called Bitcoin. He calls this website Silk Road, named after the ancient trade routes connecting Eurasia. But it isn't for silk or spices. It's for nearly everything illegal, especially drugs. The founder operates under the pseudonym Dread Pirate Roberts, DPR, a name borrowed from the mysterious pirate king in the movie The Princess Bride. In just 2 years, the site processed transactions totaling over 9.5 million Bitcoin, worth hundreds of millions of dollars at the time, becoming the Amazon of the dark web. But on January 21st, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump signs a full unconditional pardon. This man, Ross Ulbricht, walks out of prison after 11 years, clutching a small pepper plant grown in his cell. Today, we tell the full story: the rise of an idealist, the collapse of an empire, the long years of imprisonment, and his ultimate return to freedom. Who is Ross Ulbricht? Ross William Ulbricht was born on March 27, 1984, in Austin, Texas, a city known for its music, technology, and libertarian spirit. Ross grew up in a tight-knit middle-class family. His parents, Kirk and Lynn, ran their own small business, and the family spent their summers in Costa Rica in a bamboo house they built themselves. Powered by solar energy and located near remote beaches, it was there that Ross learned to surf and developed a deep love for natural freedom. From a young age, Ross displayed extraordinary intelligence and curiosity. He joined the Boy Scouts and worked his way up to the highest honor, Eagle Scout. This was no small feat. It required years of community service, leadership, and survival training. Friends remember him as brilliant yet easygoing. He drove an old Volvo, occasionally smoked cannabis, yet still managed a near-perfect SAT score of 1,460. In 2002, Ross entered the University of Texas at Dallas on a full academic scholarship, majoring in physics. To him, physics was the key to understanding the universe. In 2006, he graduated with honors and moved on to Pennsylvania State University for a master's in material science and engineering. His research was high-level, focusing on the growth of EUO thin films by molecular beam epitaxy. At one point, Ross dreamed of becoming a research scientist, perhaps making a breakthrough in clean energy. But during his years at Penn State, his worldview began to shift. He joined the college libertarians and immersed himself in the works of the Austrian School of Economics. Ludwig von Mises became his spiritual mentor. Mises argued that economic freedom is the foundation of political and moral freedom. Ross began to question the war on drugs. Why was the government using violence to ban voluntary transactions between adults? He saw this as the root cause of black market violence and the destruction of countless lives. After graduating in 2009, Ross rejected a PhD offer from Cornell. He didn't want to be confined by the system. He returned to Austin and tried his hand at a traditional business, a used bookstore called Good Wagon Books. It was idealistic. He collected unwanted books and sold them on eBay, donating 10% to charity. But the business struggled. Ross realized that traditional commerce was too restricted by logistics, taxes, and regulations. He needed a more radical experiment. By 2010, he moved to San Francisco, the heart of the crypto-libertarian world. He lived a minimalist life, even as Silk Road began to generate massive wealth. He launched the site in January 2011. In the beginning, it was just him and his then-girlfriend testing the system. He promoted it anonymously on Bitcoin forums, and the first item for sale was a batch of psychedelic mushrooms he grew himself. Ross chose the name Dread Pirate Roberts because, like the movie character, it symbolized that the individual could be replaced, but the ideal would live forever. Within months, the site exploded. It grew from a few dozen users to hundreds of thousands. By the time it was shut down in 2013, it had facilitated millions of transactions. Ross Ulbricht, the Eagle Scout and physics scholar, had become the architect of a dark web empire. His story had truly begun, a young man using code to challenge the power of the state, unaware of the storm that was about to break. The mechanics of an anonymous economy. Silk Road was not just a simple black market website. It was a meticulously designed anonymous economy. Its core technology stack made it nearly invincible between 2011 and 2013. First, there was the Tor network, the Onion router. Originally developed by the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory to protect intelligence communications, Tor layered encryption over global volunteer servers, hiding a user's true IP address like the layers of an onion. Silk Road operated as a .onion hidden service, meaning it was invisible to anyone not using the Tor browser. Second was Bitcoin. This decentralized currency allowed for transactions without banks or identity verification. While the blockchain was public, it was pseudonymous. Addresses weren't tied to names, making it incredibly difficult to track if used correctly. Third, and most crucial, was the escrow system. Ross personally designed this. When a buyer placed an order, the Bitcoin was held in a Silk Road escrow wallet. The funds were only released to the seller after the buyer confirmed receipt and satisfaction. If a dispute arose, an administrator, DPR, or his team would mediate. This mirrored the buyer protection of legitimate e-commerce sites like Amazon, drastically reducing the exit scams common in traditional black markets. The site also featured a sophisticated rating and review system. Buyers gave stars and wrote reviews. Sellers had to provide purity test results and tracking numbers sent under aliases to maintain their reputation. Ross, as DPR, frequently posted on the forums, framing his work as a moral mission. "We are not drug dealers. We are providing a free market for voluntary exchange. Violence comes from prohibition, not the market itself." The dark side. Murder for hire allegations. As the community exploded to over 100,000 buyers and thousands of sellers, a darker side emerged. Prosecutors would later allege that Silk Road facilitated the distribution of hundreds of kilograms of narcotics, leading to overdoses and broken families. Even more shocking were the murder-for-hire allegations. According to court documents, Ross, as DPR, allegedly orchestrated 6 hits. In 2013, a user named Friendly Chemist threatened to leak the identities of thousands of Silk Road users unless he received $500,000. In a chat log, DPR wrote, "I wouldn't mind seeing him executed." He allegedly contacted a supposed Hells Angels member and paid approximately $150,000 in Bitcoin to have the man killed. DPR later allegedly paid another $500,000 to eliminate a user named Tony76 and 3 associates for attempted extortion. However, a key detail remains. No one actually died. These hitmen were either scammers or undercover agents who sent staged photos, sometimes using soup cans to fake blood, to trick Ross into paying. While Ross was never formally charged with murder in the final trial, these allegations were used to secure his kingpin conviction and influence his harsh sentencing. The downfall and the fatal slip-ups. Despite his brilliance, Ross made several critical errors. He had used a personal email address on a Bitcoin forum early on, leaving a trail. A server configuration error briefly leaked the site's IP, which was recorded by the DEA. But the final blow came in San Francisco. To avoid being tracked via his home internet, Ross frequently worked at the Glen Park Public Library. On October 1, 2013, federal agents staged a distraction inside the library and swiped his laptop while it was still logged into the Silk Road master account. They caught him before he could hit a kill switch to encrypt the data. The laptop contained everything: chat logs, Bitcoin private keys, and the site's entire financial ledger. The Silk Road story took a bizarre turn when it was revealed that the law enforcement officers investigating Ross were themselves corrupt. 2 lead agents, Carl Mark Force IV, DEA, and Sean W. Bridges, Secret Service, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin during the investigation. Force created unauthorized undercover personas to extort Ross, selling him inside information for Bitcoin. Bridges used an administrator's account to drain Bitcoin from the site into his personal wallet. Their greed actually fueled the murder-for-hire plot. When Bridges stole the Bitcoin, Ross suspected a site administrator and allegedly ordered the hit on him. That hit was staged by the FBI, and the administrator survived as a cooperating witness. Both agents were eventually caught and sentenced to prison, but their corruption cast a long shadow over the integrity of the evidence used against Ross. The trial of the century. After his arrest in October 2013, Ross was transferred to New York to face federal charges. The trial, held in Manhattan in early 2015, lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution, led by Preet Bharara, presented a mountain of evidence: chat logs from the laptop, Bitcoin private keys, and the murder-for-hire messages. They argued that Ross wasn't just a technician, but a kingpin of a global criminal enterprise that facilitated over $200 million in illegal trades. Ross's defense team tried to frame him as a platform creator rather than a drug lord. They argued that the site was like eBay. The responsibility lay with the buyers and sellers, not the host. They claimed Silk Road actually reduced street violence and promoted harm reduction. However, the jury wasn't convinced. On February 4, 2015, Ross was found guilty on all 7 counts, including narcotics trafficking, money laundering, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. The hammer falls double life plus 40 years on sentencing day, May 29, 2015. Ross stood before Judge Catherine Forrest. He had written a desperate plea for mercy. "I know you must take my middle years, but please leave me my old age. Please leave a small light at the end of the tunnel." Judge Forrest was unmoved. She spent nearly an hour delivering a scathing sentencing speech. She rejected the harm reduction argument, stating that Silk Road had expanded the reach of deadly drugs and that Ross believed he was above the law. Her sentence shocked the world: 2 life sentences plus 40 years, without the possibility of parole. This sentence was far harsher than what many violent criminals or even large-scale drug traffickers receive. It sparked immediate outrage in the crypto and libertarian communities, who viewed it as a symbolic revenge by the state against a non-violent first-time offender. Survival and art in USP Tucson. Ross was sent to high-security federal prisons, eventually landing at USP Tucson in Arizona. For 11 years, he lived in a world of concrete and steel. He experienced the SHU, solitary confinement, a tiny cell with a steel toilet and no human contact. Yet, Ross became a model prisoner. He spent his time tutoring other inmates in literacy and helping them transition away from gang life. More than 150 fellow prisoners wrote letters in his support, describing him as a calming, positive influence. To keep his mind free, Ross turned to art. Using a makeshift lightbox, he hand-drew a 318-frame animation titled "Grow in the Dark." Depicting the growth of a small pepper plant, he named Leif Erikson. This plant, surviving on stolen sunlight from his cell window, became a symbol of his own resilience. He also wrote essays on the 5 keys to prison survival, accepting reality, focusing on what you can control, gratitude, hope, and helping others. Outside the prison walls, a massive movement was growing. His mother, Lynn Ulbricht, became the face of the struggle. She traveled the country gathering over 500,000 signatures on a petition for clemency. The Bitcoin community rallied behind him, raising millions of dollars through NFT auctions of his prison art to fund his legal appeals. While his legal appeals to the Supreme Court were denied, his story became a political lightning rod. In 2024, Donald Trump, seeking support from the Libertarian Party, made a bold campaign promise: "If you vote for me, on day 1, I will commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht." The stage was set for a dramatic conclusion to a decade-long saga. The Day of Freedom, January 21, 2025, the second day of Donald Trump's second term. The president signed a full and unconditional pardon for Ross Ulbricht, fulfilling a campaign promise that had energized the libertarian and crypto communities. Trump announced the move on social media, calling the original double life sentence ridiculous. The pardon was absolute. No supervised release, no remaining prison time, and no further fines. Ross's attorney, Brandon Sample, noted that after more than a decade behind bars, Ross finally had the chance to rebuild his life. That night, Ross walked out of USP Tucson in Arizona. It was a quiet, private moment. He wore a gray tracksuit and carried a small, white mesh bag. In his hands, he clutched Leaf Erikson, the pepper plant that had grown alongside him in his cell. A photo of Ross smiling in a dark parking lot, plant in hand, quickly went viral. It was the first time the world had seen him as a free man in 11 years. In May 2025, Ross made his historic first public appearance at the Bitcoin 2025 conference in Las Vegas. Stepping onto the main stage to a thunderous standing ovation, he began his speech with a line that moved the crowd to tears. "So, I'm not in a prison cell anymore." He spoke about the three pillars of the future: freedom, decentralization, and unity. He shared a personal anecdote from his cell about realizing the importance of unity, explaining that while decentralization gives us power, only unity ensures we can protect one another from overreach. He thanked the community for having his back during the decade he was in the dark. In February 2026, marking the first anniversary of his freedom, Ross has become a tireless advocate for justice reform. He continues to use his platform on X at RealRossU to highlight the cases of other crypto prisoners and non-violent offenders. On the anniversary of his pardon, he posted a photo of Leaf Erikson, now a flourishing plant in a real garden, writing, "1 year ago today, the guard knocked and said, 'You're free.' I still wake up sometimes and can't believe the sky is real. Thank you for my second chance." Ross has spent the past year traveling, surfing, and reuniting with the family that never gave up on him. But he has also remained a student of the world he helped ignite, observing how Bitcoin has evolved from the experimental currency of Silk Road into a global financial powerhouse. The story of Ross Ulbricht is not a simple tale of heroes or villains. It is a collision between the old world of state control and a new world of digital autonomy. Ross was a man of contradictions, an Eagle Scout who became a kingpin, a physicist who became a coder, and a prisoner who became a symbol. While Silk Road was shut down, its seeds were scattered. It provided the blueprint for the entire underground economy, Tor, Bitcoin, and escrow, but it also ignited the spark that brought Bitcoin into the mainstream. The debate over his legacy continues. To his critics, he is a man who facilitated the sale of deadly drugs. To his supporters, he is a pioneer who proved that technology can create a space for human agency outside the reach of the state. Ross once wrote, "If we never try because we fear the retaliation, then we have already lost." He tried. He lost 11 years, but in 2025, he won back his freedom. Today, in 2026, he is a living testament to resilience. He is no longer the dread pirate Roberts. He is Ross, a man who walked through the fire of an empire's collapse and emerged to see the dawn of the decentralized world he once only dreamed of. How do you see him? Is he a victim, a pioneer, or a dangerous experimenter? Was the pardon an act of justice or a political deal? Share your thoughts in the comments. Does the end of Ross's sentence mark the end of an era or just the beginning of a much larger revolution?